Hello everybody, this video is about traveling requirements during COVID-19 and I'm actually talking about from Hong Kong to Singapore only, but I will be splitting up the video into 5 parts. For those with different destinations, maybe the first and the final 5th part will be relevant. So besides all that, I would like to stress that this video is only applicable maybe only until the month of August 2021. As you know, things are very fluid, so I would then say that it is definitely relevant and valid till when. However, I will just share with you whatever knowledge I have to the best of my ability. For some strange reason in this modern world, everything is now reverted back to paper document form. They actually want actual paper document form for both the PCR as well as the serology test. Besides, you have to ensure that they are up to the standards I will mention as we go along. Whichever laboratories that you employ or the clinics that you go to, you have to be very sure that they are recognized by your country. They normally will have a list for you to follow, and you have to observe things like for the PCR test, it must be of the standard of ISO 15189. I can't make myself any clearer but to stress that whichever test that you go for, it must be recognized by both countries, your country of origin as well as your destination country. Part 1 is actually ex-Hong Kong, which is pre-departure from Hong Kong. So first of all, we need to do the serology test. What is serology test? It's actually about the antibodies level that you have. For this one, you would like to see positive, and it will take approximately 5 working days. Normally you do this test only after you have had 2 doses of your vaccination plus 14 days after. And if you have a positive test for arrival back into Hong Kong, you will be able to shorten your hotel quarantine by 7 days. This test is only recognized for Hong Kong residents because they expect you to do the test from Hong Kong. If you were to do your serology test from another country, currently it is not valid and not accepted by Hong Kong CHP, which is Center for Health Protection. The serology test report is valid for 3 months from the date you take your blood test, not the day that you receive your results. Next you need is the PCR test, which stands for polymerase. Sorry for the interruption, I mean polymerase chain reaction test. And you will need to have it done within 72 hours of your flight. This time you'll like to see negative on the test. That means you're safe to go. Here again, I'd like to stress that both reports, whether serology test or the PCR, you have to make sure that your name is spelled exactly like the way it is in the passport or your travel document that you intend to use for your travel. It must be also in the exact same sequence. At the moment of your check-in from the Hong Kong airport, they will also like to see your hotel booking confirmation for the reservations when you come back to Hong Kong for your quarantine period. 3 days before you arrive in Singapore, you are expected to prepay for the PCR test as you arrive at the Changi International Airport of Singapore. You are also required to fill up the Singapore Health Declaration form online. If you are not a Singapore citizen or a permanent resident of Singapore, you will need to purchase the mandatory COVID-19 insurance policy. The actual name for it is COVID-19 Travel Insurance Plan. If you have been to a high-risk country, even though you travel from Hong Kong, you may also need an antigen rapid test report. For that, you have got to check it out. Hopefully with all this, you're free to go to Singapore. Now comes to part 2 of my video, which is arrival in Singapore. First of all, you need to do the PCR test that you have paid for earlier before you depart from Hong Kong. It's also time to install apps, and if you can do it earlier, which is the Trace Together app. You will be given a GPS strap to put on, and this strap you cannot remove. It looks like a plastic watch, and you can only cut it off at the end of your SHN, which stands for Stay Home Notice, or it simply means quarantine at home. Now this is part 3 of the video after you have arrived in Singapore. So one of the things that you need to do is of course to follow and observe all the SHN policies and rules, and they will call you like at least once or twice a day to check on you. There is also ICA, which stands for the Immigration Board, as well as the MOH for the Ministry of Health. So there will be 3 parties involved in this stay home notice period. For any inquiries of the SHN, the phone number to call is 6812-5555. This is a Singapore local number. You may like to refer to the chart as to how many days of SHN you need to fulfill, also depending on the area of country you come in, as well as whether you are a Singapore citizen. On the 7th day of the SHN, if you are a Singapore citizen, you will be asked to do a PCR test in order to check you out properly of the SHN. You will be advised of the day and time and location of the place while you are observing your SHN in Singapore. You should receive notice of the place at least a day before the 7th day. Before you leave Singapore, you need to go to a private clinic to get another PCR report done, because you need a document for check-in at the Changi Airport. If for any reason you need to depart on the day of your checkout of the SHN, you will unfortunately have to do 2 different PCR tests, because the government one will not give you a paper form, and you need to check out of your SHN properly with the government arranged PCR center. So you will there and then have to go to your own private one for the paper form. And please be reminded that you have to choose a clinic according to the recognized list. If you have time, you may like to already start filling up the Hong Kong declaration form within 48 hours before you arrive into Hong Kong, as it is valid for 48 hours. Another thing I'd like to highlight is the PCR test that you pay for when you arrive at the Singapore Changi Airport will cost Singapore dollars 160, and the subsequent test that you do at the end of the SHN, as well as your pre-departure test, they call it the PDT, from Singapore will cost 233 Singapore dollars each. As you depart Singapore, do have your PCR paper ready to show that you have a negative PCR. Your Hong Kong health declaration should be completed by then, and they will churn a QR code for you. Also, you are supposed to produce the confirmation of your hotel reservation in Hong Kong, otherwise the airline will not check you in, nor give you the boarding pass. This is part 5 of the video. If you have already had your 2 vaccinations with 2 jabs, you will need to prove by showing the original copy of this document. And along with the serology test that you did before you left Hong Kong, you have to show the original copy as well when you arrive in Hong Kong Airport HKIA. Along with these 2 documents, the next document to show is actually your PCR negative report from ex-Singapore. I'm not sure why you still need to show that, because you are going to do a PCR test upon arrival in Hong Kong, but this is a requirement. Again, the original document. Finally, the hotel confirmation proof that just to show that you have reservations done, and they will arrange for transport. The government will arrange a transport for you from the HKIA to your hotel directly. Just a final tip and reminder, since everything is so fluid, you need to be really flexible. It may be a good idea for you to book your hotel in advance and choose one with free cancellations up to a certain date, because you never know whether you need any changes. And also to choose those with meals included, and that will save you a lot of hassle. Once again, this video is for Hong Kong to Singapore and back to Hong Kong, and if you happen to have other destinations, the first and the final part of the video will still be relevant for you, and it is only valid for maybe the month of August 2021. Hope all these tips help you. Besides the hotel free cancellation timing, you have to be Yeah, you have to be careful with the validity periods. For example, within 72 hours before the flight depart, and you might like to give slight allowance in case of flight delays. Otherwise, your PCR report will no longer be valid. Likewise for the serology test report, which you may consider doing in advance, since you can keep it for like 3 months rather than to wait 5 days for the report when you need it urgently. I have painstakingly gone through all the research to get all this information, so I do wish that my tips are of some help. Thank you for listening and watching this video once again. See you next time. Bye bye.